Now we're all shy.
It takes a second. I just have to remember to click record.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then I need to mute myself on.
Yeah.
Oh, I just got my notification that we're live.
Yeah, me too. Now I got to mute mine too.
Well, I guess I'll.
All right.
I'm going to post something on the. Well, let me test. I'll just say something brief. Hello, everyone. In. All right. Looks like everything is working. You guys are seeing it work, right?
It's great.
Looks like there's a couple people watching. I'll just say a brief hello. We're going to be starting the presentation shortly, pretty precisely at 6 p.m. If anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to submit them in the chat room, as we'll do our best to address those during our break sessions. And thanks for being here. Hello, everyone. Looks like we have a few more that have joined us in the last few minutes. Just a reminder, we will be starting this presentation at 6 p.m. So thanks for tuning in. We encourage you to fill out any, if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit them in the chat box on this YouTube channel, as we will do our best to address those during our break sessions. And thanks for being here. Hey, Kelsey, are you able to see the chat or what I sent in there? I just want to make sure. Okay, thanks. And then I'll put myself on mute once it hits 6 o'clock. All right, looks like a few more have joined. Just saying hello and thank you for tuning in into this presentation. We will be starting it at precisely at 6 o'clock. And if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, feel free to submit them on the chat room during this YouTube streaming. And we look forward to addressing those during our break sessions. Thanks again for being here. See, we already got a hello, so saying hello back.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Holly Maddie, and I'm the president of Crossroads Community Planning. I've been retained by the Delaware County Finance Authority to provide zoning expertise as they partner with Orange Township to examine future growth along the US 23 corridor. Joining me tonight are Michelle Bonney and Kelsey Scott, and I'm going to let them both introduce themselves. So Michelle.
I'm sorry, everyone. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Michelle Bonney, the Planning and Zoning Director of Orange Township. Just wanted to say a quick thanks for being here tonight. I will be discussing the proposed zoning regulations and also reviewing the draft boundary maps for this district. And I'll leave it to Kelsey.
Thanks, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. Kelsey Scott here with Delaware County's Economic Development Department. I'm going to be covering the results of the survey that we hosted from, I believe, late February through early May. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that, as that's really like a huge piece of the project that we created. So I'm really excited to share that with you. And to also answer any questions that you may have for me. So with that, I'll pass it back off to Holly.
Great, thank you. So hopefully some of you joined us for our last meeting. At that meeting, we really talked about the long-range plans for the Route 23 corridor. And since that time, our team has been working to prepare zoning regulations for the Route 23 corridor and trying to also understand the community's desires through our public input process so that we can write zoning regulations that reflect the community's goals. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to talk about a few things. First of all, we will be communicating why these regulations are so important to the development of the corridor. And at the same time, we'll be talking about what we've heard from you as our residents and business owners, because like I said, that's very important to us as we write these regulations. At that point in time, we will take a short break, and that break will be utilized for a question and answer session for anything that we've covered up to that point in time. But please don't go away during that break, because afterward, we will be explaining the details of the proposed regulations. And then we will conclude our meeting with a question answer session for anything else that we've covered up to that point, or anything for the evening that you might have a question about, and discuss our next steps. So if you look at the left side of your screen, there's a couple of options for providing feedback to us. If you think of something, a question or a comment that you want to ask or state tonight, feel free to type those in the chat box on the YouTube channel. And during our breaks, we will answer those questions tonight. And as long as we're not overwhelmed with a million questions, we anticipate that we should be able to get through all of those questions and provide answers to those tonight. If for some reason we have a lot and we need to get back to you later, we will make sure we get answers to you later, but our intention is to answer those tonight. If you have something that you think of after the meeting, because we all know that sometimes we don't think of it right while we're listening to a presentation, you do have the opportunity to make follow-up questions or comments after the meeting, and that can be done by sending an email to the econdevelopment@co.delaware.oh.us. That email goes straight into Kelsey's email box, and we will get an answer back to you as soon as possible after she reviews those and gets those out to us. So hopefully that's all straightforward of how to provide comments to you. And we're going to move on and talk about the Route 23 corridor. I said at our last meeting, and I think it's worth repeating tonight as well, this corridor is unique because it kind of serves two purposes. It serves as both a regional transportation connection between Northwest Ohio and the Columbus region, while it simultaneously provides local access to a growing commercial area. So it's very important for us from both of those perspectives that we're planning for this growth area so that we can keep traffic moving, both for the regional perspective as well as you as residents and business owners, to make sure that people can get to their communities, their residential communities, and patrons can get to your businesses. And we feel that we can do this all through some smart growth policies. We feel that those will create a balanced solution that will allow this corridor to continue to grow in a manner that will attract quality development desired by the residents and bring high quality commercial investments to provide a financial return to the township. So what do we mean by smart growth? We mean a growth that diversifies our tax base by providing opportunities for new types of businesses to help reduce the tax burden on homeowners. It also means creating quality development that respects the heritage of the township. That's why we're asking for your input. We want to make sure that we're reflecting your goals and your and adhering to your high standards that you expect as residents. So why are we doing this today? Well, we feel that it's important because the growth continues along Route 23 corridor. But as you'll see in this next slide, today's even more of an important time with what we're seeing going on with COVID. With COVID-19, businesses have been challenged in unprecedented ways. The county's unemployment rate went from 2.8% in December to 9.3% in May. That is a huge increase in a short amount of time. And so throughout the country, businesses have been experiencing furloughs and layoffs to help ride through this health crisis, while some businesses have even had to shut their doors altogether. So Orange Township needs to be prepared to respond to business needs so that they are able to reopen. And as new businesses emerge, there are not significant barriers to this economic growth, because this economic growth is what is needed to provide financial stability to this community. So as you'll see on the next slide, right now, the township's largest growth sector has been single-family homes. This places a large burden on tax owners or property owners and the school system. Over 90% of the school district's tax revenue comes from residential uses. This leaves the only choice for the school district as to raise property taxes on the residents of Orange Township. So we really feel the township needs to consider changing directions to avoid becoming a bedroom community with such a large tax burden on its residents. So you'll see on the next slide that we're hoping to shift land use policies from residential development to commercial, mixed use, and advanced manufacturing We feel that those shifts in land uses will create better job opportunities within Orange Township, and provide a more diversified tax base to help reduce the taxes on you as the residents. I do want to point out this does not mean uncontrolled growth. These policies will require high quality development through various zoning regulations for enhanced architecture, landscaping, open space, and connectivity requirements to ensure that the township grows in a planned and desirable manner. And as we have heard from many of you through this public input process, this is very important to you. And that's why we want to go over what we have found out through this public input process and hear what you have said through the community survey that we had available to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey, and she's going to talk about the results.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly. Before I kick off talking about the survey, I just wanted to say on behalf of the team, we were blown away by the amount of participation that we received from the community. We were really trying to target residents, of course, but also business owners and people that work in the township. And we were amazed overall, not even just speaking on behalf of the public information gathering period in general. In the public meeting that we had in April, we had about 40 people engaged in that conversation. Great follow-up emails of different uses that people do want, as well as things that people don't want. So this has been a really great project, and knowing and being able to mold the regulations around what you, the community, want. So with that being said, we'll warm up with a demographics question from the survey. Obviously, we're not going to go through question by question, but we'll give you kind of a good overview. So with that, so to kick it off, the 74% of the respondents are between the ages of 34 and 54, which I think is a really great representation of the new residents that we're seeing in the town, moving into the township, as well as representative of Orange Township population as a whole. So as you see in the next survey question, how long have you lived or worked in Orange Township? Over half have been here for more than 10 years. So it's people that are really invested in the community and have seen a lot of changes in the last 10 years as it is, and really care about what and what 23 looks like in the future. So, then we also got really good engagement from, longer term residents of 20 plus years. And what is that? 15% from that are newcomers too. So glad to see engagement from all realms. We also wanted to see how frequently you're using US23 in the township. And I mean, as you can see, if you live or work in the township, you're using 23. People are using it, if not on a daily basis, a weekly basis. And maybe one person said that it was rarely. So I think that's it's really good to know that people are very aware of the corridor that took the study. And then we also wanted to know how you utilize US23. And I think that this graph really says a lot. And speaking to a point that Holly made earlier, that this is a very unique corridor. From a regional perspective, 23 is a transportation corridor, but obviously to Orange residents and business owners and businesses in general, this is a quality of life corridor. With people using the corridor, 91% using it for errands. So whether that's running their kids around, going to the gym, doctor's appointments, and then 84% are saying that they're using it for shopping, dining, and entertainment, which I think is really good to know. But as an aside, we noticed from our public information gathering that people are also wanting to see more of that, to have more opportunities to eat and have fun on 23. So I think that you'll see in Michelle's part of the presentation that we made good room for that. And then of course, nearly 50% are using it for work, for commuting to work. And one point that I have just as a whole for this is that it seems as though a lot of people are looking to want a lot of those things within one corridor in their home, in the place where they live. So I think that points a lot to potential for mixed use. So you'll see that in the plan as well. And one other point that I have too that I think is worth noting is you'll see that there were a couple other please specifies. So we had a few people comment just to reiterate that they use a corridor mainly to get to work. They live off of 23. And then a couple other things that I think are worth noting are that 2 of the 6 or 7 responses that were comments were that they use it to access parks, which I think is worth noting as well. And that people are really active in the community, and we have a lot of beautiful parks off of 23 with Shale Hollow, and we're also close to Alum Creek. And then the other comment that I wanted to note was one person said that they use it to get to Columbus State and the Career Center. So even though it's not in, even though those aren't in Orange Township, they're still very big drivers of US 23 very close by. So that was a lot for one slide, but there was a lot to say for that one. So for the next one, we put together a graph to really gauge how people felt about the corridor. So we have a few statements here, and we wanted to gauge how much people agreed with it. So you'll see varying colors to see like the different positive or negative connotations with those. But the first one is the corridor attractive? And you'll see that a lot of, the majority really don't have an opinion on that. But a third of participants said the corridor isn't very attractive. So room for growth there. That's good to know. I think the next two are very important in wanting to know how many people want and choose to use a corridor versus has to use a corridor. So you'll see with people that want to use a corridor, again, about a third really don't have an opinion, don't really agree or disagree. But a third do agree that they do like to use a corridor. So that's good news. And then, but you'll see a big difference in people definitely have to use a corridor. So about over 80% are saying that they have to use a corridor. So, and then the last statement that we asked was, does the corridor lacks the right type of businesses? And I think, and having, again, a third of people that really don't have an opinion on that. But then again, we also have nearly a third that agree that, no, we don't have the right types of businesses that serve us, the Orange Township community. So that's really good information to know as we were creating these regulations. And then with this one, there was an overarching question that we posed to the survey participants of, when you consider future development, which of the following concerns you? And then we wanted to gauge, again, those concerns. And I think it's very glaringly obvious. There wasn't as much in between with the things that people were concerned about, and that is increased traffic congestion, neglect and deterioration, unplanned development, and loss of green space. And again, I think that really speaks volumes, especially in terms of the green space, going back to that parks comment, the couple parks comments that we had from one of the previous questions. Again, to address unplanned development, of course, this is what these regulations are for, to make sure that the development that does happen on this corridor are things that serve the residents and the businesses. One thing that was really interesting to me is like the very almost perfectly even split of how participants felt about the potential for decreased property value. So I thought that was really interesting, and what development could mean for people's homes. In terms of things that people aren't really concerned with, people aren't really concerned about missed economic opportunities or missed opportunities to enhance lifestyle. And I think that's actually that's good. That means that, that we have that room for growth and room for that enhancement of lifestyle, and that that isn't necessarily at top of people's minds, that they're worried that good growth won't come from this in the future. So with that being said, we are going to take our break. Again, as Holly said, don't step away. This won't be too long. But before we take our questions, I wanted to be sure again to address, please submit your questions and listening live. If you're tuning in a little later, or you think of more comments or feedback that you have, be sure to email me at that econdevelopment@co.delaware.oh.us email address. As we already said, this goes right to my inbox. We'll be sure to either address any questions or pass along any comments. We'll be talking and interacting with the Orange Zoning Commission very soon, and they'll want to know as much feedback from the public as they can get. So again, even though the information gathering period has ended, we still very much value that feedback. So with that, let's see if we have any questions. Okay, so right now I'm not seeing any, but we'll give everybody a couple minutes if they're typing things up. And High Banks, you're right, Mark. That's the one that I was thinking of. I'm like, I always want to say Metro Park, but it's High Banks. But it is a Metro Park. It's just not High Banks Metro Park. We got a shout out to a mom too.
I think that's me.
I was gonna say, I don't think my dog's reaching out to me on that.
No. So hi, Mason.
Very good.
Do we want to go on?
There's a bit of a lag, so
Okay.
there we go. I think we have one comment that just came in.
Okay, cool. Have we talked to ODOT yet? I have talked to ODOT some on the different types of traffic movements and the accident rates and those sorts of things. And I know Bob Lamb, as economic development director, has talked to them about some of the streetscape stuff as well. So there's continued conversations with ODOT going on as we go through this process.
Looks like the other questions or comments are related to the transportation concerns too.
Okay. Yes.
So Todd Dove says, since increased traffic congestion is the biggest concern, how will that be addressed with the increase in density that's proposed?
Okay, so a couple things with that. One is that there will be a traffic study that's required with all new development. And of course, the developers will be required to do any kind of improvements that those traffic studies require to keep traffic moving. The other thing I want to point out with the mixed use developments is that we're really looking at trying to create a walkable type community. So yes, there will be more traffic on some of the other roads, but internally, hopefully trying to keep that ability to have walkability, bikes, etc., and connecting with multi-use paths and sidewalks so that people can get from their residential neighborhoods to these mixed-use communities without necessarily having to get into the car. So there's a couple of different ways that we're trying to address the traffic concerns.
And then I know that you pretty much addressed this, Holly, but there was a second one that says what proposals are currently being considered when it comes to relief of congestion. I don't know if you wanted to add any more to that or.
I will add that the regulations call for connectivity between developments, either by connecting the parking lots so that you can go from one development to the next without going back out onto the main line roads. And the other option is for frontage or backage roads to be constructed as part of the overall planning process to create an internal network within the developments to alleviate people having to go back out on 23 to go from one development to the other. So creating an overall plan for that traffic.
Very And then we have one more question as of right now. I was wondering about limited access to US 23 from outlots to reduce congestion via access roads.
I'm sorry, that's what I thought I was answering. What was I answering before? That same thing, they all go together, because
Yeah.
that's pretty much the same thing, is that the outlots would connect with the parking lots or connect through the frontage or the backage roads. All of these to create that internal planning of traffic, to create a traffic pattern within those developments rather than creating direct access out onto 23. So I think all of these questions are very similar and have similar answers to them.
Yeah. And then just to this, we have Kelvin wanting to dive in a little bit deeper. How many service roads are being planned for the 23 area?
So I can't really dive into an actual number at this point in time. It's just something that gives an option to developers when they're planning it, that they could have these frontage or backage roads as part of their plan to meet that connectivity requirement. They may be able to figure out other ways to do that through connecting parking lots or other internal local access roads. So it's really how the developers choose to meet that requirement and how the zoning commission or how the trustees through the approval process would approve that traffic circulation.
And then Pamela wants to ask as well, how will that impact the traffic on connecting roads like Powell and Orange? Just the overall increase of development.
Sure. So yes, there, some of that traffic will come out to those connecting roads. Again, the developer will be required to do traffic studies that will determine if additional turn lanes are required or additional widenings are required to accommodate that traffic. We're also requiring the setbacks for buildings to adhere to the future right-of-ways for those corridors, so that when roads need to be widened, the land area is there for those road widenings. So really trying to think ahead and knowing how to plan for those future road needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Kelvin just has one more comment and just saying currently Powell Road is a limiting factor for the east and west.
Okay, sure. We will certainly take that into consideration. Thank you. Are we good?
I think we're good.
Thanks a lot.
And then if there's any other comments, since there's a little bit of a lag, so apologize for that. So if there's any other comments that we don't hit for this break, we'll make sure to hit them or address them at the last break session. So I guess I'll go on.
Yes.
All right. So I will be discussing some of the proposed zoning regulations for the district text. I'll go over these bullet points briefly. The first one is to have a proactive statement to the development community regarding what types of developments are acceptable to the community. And that'll be based on the survey results, our stakeholder meetings, and really defining what our vision is. Again, as Kelsey has mentioned earlier, we did a really successful survey, and our outreach methods were more than what we usually do for any plan, so because we know the importance of this as it will impact the entire community. The next bullet is that new development standards must be adhered to with minimum deviation to achieve the desired outcomes. And I just want to clarify, these are new standards that we are creating, yet they'll be consistent throughout the entire corridor. Following that, this will allow projects to proceed forward with a clear understanding of their zoning requirements with a streamlined environment by minimizing repetitive steps. So that's really no more of that, an application is going to take 6 to 12 months to review, and no more missed opportunities is the goal of this plan. And then the last bullet on this is that this document mandates a high quality project by stating materials, development standards, lighting, landscaping, and other key items. This will be more detailed than our current zoning resolution. I hope that the focus is on the quality architectural standards as far as building materials go, restrictive landscaping requirements, maintaining our consistent signage throughout, and parking too. So this will really dive into the quality and aesthetic part of this corridor more than what our current zoning resolution has in place. The next few slides is going to be the draft boundaries of this district. I emphasize the word draft as this is going to be the first map that's presented to the Zoning Commission and then ultimately decided by the Board of Trustees. So there may be some modifications in the meetings coming up, but we wanted to share this to the public first. So we're starting from the very south border, the southern end of Orange Township, which that major intersection is going to be Powell and 23. And as you can see on Powell and 23, this dark purple that's identified on these maps can propose as our mixed use districts. So those mixed use districts are focused closer to the corridor. To the east, we would encourage advanced manufacturing along the railroad line, because that'll capture the taxes, but keep the high quality standards along the corridor. So when we go further up north, we have that commercial base. There's a pocket of multifamily that's proposed. We're getting towards Orange and 23, which I think I could show easier on the next slide. That will be focused on the commercial, which again, a lot of this is already commercial, but this will capture more of those high quality standards within this district. So going north of Orange Road, you see that the commercial again, and then towards the east, we have that industrial, advanced manufacturing, those kind of like flex office spaces. Like another few pockets of multifamily. I do want to point out Home Road. That is one of the biggest infrastructure projects that's in the works. We do have this multifamily development that's already been approved and currently under construction. But this Home Road extension is not only going to create alleviation, or it'll alleviate some traffic off of 23 vehicular, but it also be a multimodal path that'll go over the railroad tracks and connect to Evans Farm. So really for the pedestrians, the bikers, all of us can be able to walk from 23 to Home Road into Evans Farm and really grasp the entire community and create that sense of place that we want. So this was, again, focused on that mixed use area because, if we're encouraging walkability, we would encourage mixed uses. So going north of Home Road, we've identified some few areas of multifamily and single family currently. There is some of those single family condos that are in the works right now. So we thought that would match that development up here. Going on the next slide, this is the furthest north on the map. So we'll first talk about Lewis Center Road in 23. That intersection is almost fully developed with commercial. But the thing I forgot to mention earlier is that some of these parcels are going to be developed, but this will, if for redevelopment opportunities, they can be able to use this district to create higher quality, better uses for the corridor. So just because it's developed doesn't mean that it can't be used in the future. And the last area I want to point out is on Shanahan and 23. That's one of our biggest undeveloped areas in the township remaining. And we have identified that, at least on the east side of 23, as another mixed use district that we thought would be pretty valuable over there, and then continuing that commercial on the west side. So I'm sure there's going to be some questions and discussions about this, but I have a few more slides and we'll continue on. So again, just some other brief points about the document, the text. The comprehensive land use plan was approved in 2018. It was a very successful plan. We partnered with Ohio State University. We received over 500 survey results, and I'm happy to say that we are really sticking true to that plan. And that was our vision that started in 2018, because that plan did recommend doing a 23 corridor district in the future, and here we are today. And then that corridor district would encourage an attractive streetscape. I mean, we're focusing on those high quality standards. And, I believe we're staying true to what we recommended a few years ago. We also encourage in the comp plan to establish mixed use areas. We know that's something that's needed. Evans Farm is one of our first mixed use areas, but we didn't have a mixed use district to really move that development through in the beginning. Fortunately, we got to where we are today, but having a mixed use type of zoning will really create some great uses along the corridor. And those key intersections is going to be Shanahan, Home Road, and Powell Road for those mixed use areas. The last bullet point I want to say, again, which was also recommended in the comp plan, is to encourage that advanced manufacturing, as I identified in the maps along the railroad, would be focusing more on that industrial type of uses. And, research and development, logistical uses, those are still growing. I just approved one last week. So, we're happy to see that continue moving forward, and we need to define more areas for that. And then this is my last slide, but a few more bullet points. So the text will, we hope that for it to have appropriate densities, setbacks, height requirements that will support the requirement for the community amenities. And those amenities, as defined in the community survey results, are, allowing for more green space in those multimodal paths. If we're able to incentivize developers with granting such densities and setbacks, height requirements, I think we'll have some more opportunity for open space and recreational uses. The other point is that enhancing that architectural, lighting, signage, and connectivity. I can't say enough that the aesthetic and the appearance of the corridor is going to be key for this text. And the last point is we all will work together to create quality, well-planned development throughout an efficient review process. And I want to point out the efficiency is key. Let's get these quality standards in place now to streamline well thought out development for our future. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So as we conclude tonight, I want to share with you something I tend to tell the communities I work with. Growth is going to happen. It isn't a matter of if, but how you are going to grow. So that's the importance of planning, and that's the importance of writing zoning regulations so that it doesn't happen haphazardly. I think this is even more important with where Orange Township is located. In Central Ohio, organizations such as Jobs Ohio and One Columbus are predicting that Columbus region is going to grow faster post-COVID-19 than pre-COVID-19. We were already growing as a region very rapidly before the pandemic. And if it's going to grow faster, that means we're just going to see even faster growth along the Route 23 corridor. So now is the time to look at ways to diversify the tax base for Orange Township. As I mentioned, we need to get away from that residential bedroom community and transform the community's desires into reality that will promote quality development that will continue to make Orange Township a premier community. It is a premier community, and we want to continue to make it a premier community. So with that, we're going to open it up for our final question and answer session. Again, your questions can be typed into the chat box and we will answer them tonight, or you can send it to the email address on the screen if you think of something later. So I guess, Kelsey, where are we with questions?
Yeah, so we have about 4. We have 1 comment and 3 questions here. So Mark Freeman just has a comment saying that we really need a 23 bypass for the trucks. There.
Yeah, and that, there's long range plans on the books for Delaware County that I feel, others would need to speak about more rather than me. I don't think this zoning document is going to do anything along those lines. We kind of spoke about some of those long range plans in our last meeting, but those will be ODOT driven, Delaware County driven, not something that the zoning document specifically focuses on.
Great, thanks. And will you be developing shared parking standards for adjacent or mixed use developments?
Yes, we will. And that's something Michelle really set up front to us when we started as a team looking at this. And so I spent a lot of time looking at shared use parking and different ways to approach that. So we have developed not only minimum parking requirements, but maximum parking requirements. And then we've allowed certain reduction in the total number of spaces required if they meet certain shared uses that have different peak times for their parking demands. So yes, we have looked into that and are proposing that.
And
Awesome.
Holly, if I can add, I mean, also with parking, as far as like the appearance aesthetic to it, we're trying to encourage that parking to be in the rear. As far as, you know, when you drive 23 right now, you do see a lot of sea of parking, and that's not going to look pretty later on. So I think our parking standards will really help with that high quality appearance.
Yeah. And the other thing that we've done is created pods of parking so that they can only have so many spaces before they have to do a landscaping area to break up that sea of asphalt as well.
Very good. Well, and I remember we addressed that in the public open house just a little bit too. So I'm, you know, I think that that's like a really good point. I'm glad that that was brought up by C. Trebellis.
That's Christine Trebellis.
Oh, hey, Christine. Christine had another question too. So she asks, how will this overlay work with the neighboring township north of Shanahan Road?
So do you want to touch on how this is planning on to be a county-wide plan eventually?
So there was, we spoke about this at the public open house in April, but really in fall of last year, there was a study conducted on the US23 corridor by a fundraising organization called One Delaware. And they presented that to the county. And one of the really big recommendations of evaluating 23 as a countywide corridor was to have an overlay district in like across the whole county community if possible. Of course, that's all up to the jurisdictions of how they would like to proceed with that. But just really, again, as Holly mentioned, the development it's not a matter of if the development will happen, it's how it will happen. So trying to partner with, the county is looking to partner with communities that are interested in adopting overlays to see how we can kind of streamline this and again, create sense of community in each of those communities to make sure that they all have their own representation of how that development happens and having kind of their own personalities in the different jurisdictions represented. So hopefully that answers that question. But in terms of any long-term or short-term plans right now, in terms of the township directly to the north, we don't have anything quite in place as of right now. But hopefully with Orange leading the way and really seeing how this unveils and to see the positive effects that this may have, we like to think that other communities may jump aboard. So we'll see what happens. West Mayor 417 asks, can you speak to how redevelopment of existing properties can bring them in sync with the newer standards that will improve the aesthetics?
Yes, and can I answer that in conjunction with Mark Freeman's next comment right after that, which says, is there any way to realistically encourage existing developments, especially commercial, to update to meet the new standards? I think those go hand in hand because what's going to happen is that the developers are going to have the ability to choose to go under their current zoning or to choose to follow these new regulations. But these new regulations include a streamlined review process. So it is to the developer's benefit to continue to use these increased aesthetic standards because if they meet those standards and they comply with them, they can get through the process much faster than if they went through the old ways with where they have to negotiate the standards. So hopefully that addresses that. but redevelopment, I think they're going to prefer to take the new route.
Mhm. We have a comment from Todd Dove too, that I think is really important that we address here, and that is, this appears to be more for the developers and not the residents. Residents only speak up when an application is submitted for a development in their backyard. I feel this takes away their voice.
So I would say that I understand the concern, and I, as a, if I was a resident, I would feel that as well. But this has a review process that does go through the township trustees. It is a required public hearing when a developer comes in. But even before it gets to that point, this whole public input process, as we develop these regulations, and we take it through the zoning commission to get input to make sure these regulations really result in development that is aesthetically pleasing and meets the desires of the community. That's when the residents can speak up and talk and put their input in. But then once the regulations are in place and a developer does come on board and they put an application in, the developer still has to go through a public hearing with the township trustees where where the residents can provide input to the proposed project. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, Michelle.
Well, yeah, I just want to share, like, so for the public hearing to the trustee level, as far as the notification reaching out to those residents, it's the same the public notice part is going to be the same process as if it were to go to zoning commission. So we will be reaching out to the residents within 200 feet of that property and publishing legal notices, keeping up with our social media avenues too. So there is a public voice. It'll just be at the trustee level at that point.
We have a question from Sarah Stargell that I could answer, and that is, will this presentation be saved and available for viewing afterwards? I have concerns about traffic on US 23 and wasn't able to join the meeting until after those discussions. And Sarah, yes. This video will live on the YouTube page, if that's right, Michelle. So you are able to view it. And I can say that we did address some of these concerns because there were a lot of questions prior to this about earlier in the conversation about the transportation. So you will be happy to know that we can view it later.
Yeah, or send an email on what's available on the slide here too. If you're having trouble accessing it, we can send it to you directly.
Because we are recording this as well for our sake as well. And Pamela asks, did the survey indicate that residents desired additional commercial development? So this project, and somebody stop me if they have anything else to add or to add here, but this was brought about in interest by the trustees, this project of regulation. But I will say, from a county perspective, we conducted a survey from the 23 corridor study that I mentioned earlier. For the branding piece, which, as a little plug, we did release the new branding for the US 23 corridor at a county level, which is really, really cool. Hopefully, I think there was an article in the dispatch today about that. But while we were trying to identify the branding of the US 23 corridor in response to what is it, what could it look like, how can we unify the community in this way? This was brought about in that survey of desired additional commercial development. And I think that a lot of people have similar concerns about traffic, which can lead to people being a little bit more hesitant to the commercial development. But I think as residents start to understand the necessity of commercial development in terms of helping them diversify the tax base so that school taxes are not being burdened only by residents in that sense, then it opens up a little bit more interest and understanding of how A, the taxes work, but B, knowing that the community has more opportunity to work in their own community and have fun in their own communities instead of instead of leaving the township to Columbus or even up north to fill those needs. Does anybody else have anything to add to that?
Well, I think that the survey results, I mean, maybe we didn't ask specifically of commercial, but there was a question on if you desired more economic opportunity. And to me, I don't think economic opportunities, more housing. I would assume, you know, we want that commercial, we need that balance of taxes in our community. So I think that was a strong desire. I mean, if you look at the slides earlier, that was that green box. So.
I agree. You guys covered that well. Thank you.
Good. And then Mark Freeman, the public wants more commercial tax base to take the pressure off residents when it comes to school taxes. So I think that was a comment to Pamela's question as well. And then Pamela says, that makes sense. Just I'm sorry, I'm just like reading these for the first time. Robert Hall, I've heard a lot of discussion about our future and growth. What research has been concluded to prevent results like Northland, Eastland, Bryce Road, 161 areas where when we are 25 to 30 years in the future? Sorry about that.
I think the key is always thinking ahead of how to be adaptable to redevelopment. And I think that this overlay really does encourage redevelopment because it creates that streamlined review process. So it helps people to know that they can redevelop and meet certain goals and standards. And I think that will encourage that redevelopment. I think sometimes we see communities, you know, build out further and keep building further just because it's easier to go in and build where, you know, it's the zoning regulations allow it and it's faster and easier. And if we create that process to encourage that redevelopment, I hope that would prevent that from continuing in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just to add to that, you know, that's what a lot of this planning is about, to make sure that it doesn't get to that point. And having these standards in place make it so we don't have, you know, a dozen more gas stations on, on the strip in Orange Township, because we heard that a lot. No more gas stations. We don't want gas stations. So, you know, making sure that's what this whole project is about, is to make sure that we don't become, you know, a 161 or Eastland or Northland. So just to add to that. Kelvin has another question. Happy to have you tonight, Kelvin. If a person is going to work in Orange, can they afford to live in Orange based on the jobs that will be generated?
Well, I think that part of this process is to create a diverse housing options as well. With the mixed use development, there are a number of different housing options that can be provided and that we can continue to have high paying jobs come into the community as well, with advanced manufacturing and office and those sorts of things, to make sure that we're creating a diversified tax base and housing opportunities for the community.
Sorry, I'm going through. I don't think that we have any other questions for us anyway.
Okay. All right. So we good to start wrapping it up here then, and I'll finish it off. Just wanted to say thank you all for joining us tonight. Really great questions that have come out of this, and thank you again for your input. I know it takes time for you all to join us and be a part of this, but we know that it's important to you as a community, and it's important for us to know how everyone feels and address your concerns. The next step in our process is to have a public hearing with the Orange Township Zoning Commission, and that's going to take place on June 16th at 7 p.m. This is going to be a virtual meeting, And you will be able to find a link to the meeting by either going to the township website, the township's Facebook page, or coming to the YouTube channel as well. So again, June 16th at 7 p.m. This is an important milestone in the development of these regulations, and we encourage public input throughout this entire process, and especially at the zoning commission level. The zoning commission is the one with the technical expertise to understand how land develops and how those regulations are applied. So we need to really hone in on all of this and get the best document that we can going through that process. So if possible, we would encourage you to provide your comments to the email address on the screen or directly to Michelle Bonney as Township Development and Zoning Director before the meeting. That way we can compile that information and we can really have a robust conversation with the Zoning Commission over those comments. But if you don't want to give those ahead of time and you want to actually attend the public meeting and be a part of that hearing and speak at the meeting, that's certainly welcome as well. We just want to make sure that you have the ability to voice your opinions on the regulations as they move forward. So with that, I'm going to say thank you again. It's really been a great opportunity to work with Orange Township, this amazing team, and look forward to continuing these conversations. And I love the dynamics of the public input that we've been getting at these meetings. So thank you very much for your time. And I'm going to ask Michelle and Kelsey if they have any closing remarks as well.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. And I guess I'll just take my time to thank everybody here again for all of their comments and all of their really great questions, and asking the difficult questions that they are the most concerned about. And I'm seeing a lot of love coming from everybody that's been participating, and we really appreciate that. And with that, I'll pass it off to Michelle. So thank you all, and I hope you have a really great night.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I just want to have a point. When this all first started, we were very concerned because of the pandemic how to relay this information. And I kind of chuckle almost that this is our second open house that we've had, and it's just been such a great turnout. The comments, the feedback are more than what we usually get. So we're just really happy to see this. And a lot of it is positive. I think we understand traffic is one of the biggest concerns, that's going to be a long process to work through. But we'll fix it. We'll do our best. So thanks again for being here. And this will be pre-recorded. I think most of you have my contact information. I know we didn't post it on the slide, so I apologize for that. But if you go on our website, orangetwp.org, if you just click email zoning, I'll be there to reach out. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.